Oh, yes, sir. I am from the South, from the great state of Kentucky.
Do you like to fry some chicken?
I fry chicken, I fry crawdads, I fry just about nothing, anything you can ever see, or nothing at all. I fried nothing. The other day I fried nothing for dinner. What you do is you get a pot of oil boiling, you get some batter, and then you just fry nothing. You batter nothing and you fry it.
Sounds like a very nothing tasting food.
Yeah. Well, it's like onion rings without the onions, just rings.
Onionless onion rings. That sounds tasty.
Yeah. My daughter once told me that. She's like, I like onion rings. I just wish they didn't have any onion in them. I said, well, what would they fry? She said, circles.
Or batter.
Just circles, okay? You just gotta, well, what would they batter? They gotta batter something. So if you wanted to make onion rings without an onion, you'd have to batter a circle.
So you just batter air.
No, you batter a circle, I said. It's a shape. It's round, like your head.
So battered shake. Okay, that
I guess
sounds
you ain't
very.
never. I guess you ain't never had onion rings before. They're round, like a circle. Now,
Like a
normally,
donut.
normally that's difficult to do. You got to have the onion be the circle, and then you put the batter on that and you fry it.
Mm.
But what I discovered was a way to bypass that, and the way to do that is you take the onion away, and you just fry the circle where the onion had been.
How do you get the onion, the circle to stay a circle with no onion?
Well, when you remove the onion, it leaves an indentation
Ah,
in
like a
the
metaphysical invitation?
no an indentation in time space.
Like a hole.
Time
Like
space bends away from the onion because it's too smelly. It makes it time space's eyes water. And then if you remove the onion quickly, put the circle in the fryer, you can fry up onion rings without the onions.
the
You
reason
gotta
I'm
be
not laughing
quick.
is because in science we have the same theory. When an electron moves from a space, it leaves a hole behind, apparently. So,
Right. Same theory. Yeah.
and that hole is an actual thing,
Yeah. Some physicists came
apparently.
down and visited me to watch me make my nothing rings the other day. I explained how
Yeah,
the stronger
they
the
help.
onion, the more time you can take. If it's a weak onion, you got to be real quick. Same with
Ah,
electrons.
okay.
Same with electrons. And some of them are kind of
So,
pansies, and some of them are kind of tough. You know, if you're a helium
uh,
electron, you got a real high voice. The other electrons tease you.
yeah, that makes sense.
But you probably had science class. You know this.
Yeah, the stronger the onion, the more time is allowed to
Right.
dilate, so
Right.
that you can cook it for later in the evening. You probably put it in the fridge
Right. Well,
a whole, and
if you
then
get extra time if it's colder. When it's heated up, you got if it's too warm, it won't even work. That's where most people make the mistake.
ah,
I use liquid nitrogen. I submerge the
to cook.
onion in liquid nitrogen and quickly and let it sit there real still. Then very carefully, without disturbing any of the liquid nitrogen, remove the onion. Then fill that with batter and deep fry the whole liquid nitrogen encased package. That's how you do it.
And that's not
Yeah. The tricky part is removing the
liquid
onion.
nitrogen.
But
Onionless onion rings.
yeah, onionless. Well, they're called nothing rings.
Nothing rings.
The most delicious nothing you ever tasted is what the motto is.
The most delicious. Okay.
Well, I season it. I season the warps to time space with seasoning salt. That's my secret. That's one of my secrets. I'm not gonna give you the secret ingredient. It's not just love either.
It's salt.
No, well, yeah. Who told you? Who gave up my secret ingredient to you? Was it Jane? Was it Steven? Who was it? Now everybody's gonna know.
I think it was you. You dilated the time. You went into the future. I heard it, and yeah.
Oh well, time travel is one of the things that can accidentally happen if you do the nothing ring wrong. You will be sent hurtling. Were you playing around with this unsupervised? You were, weren't you?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how you got sent hurtling into the future. This is not for amateurs. You probably tried to do it with what do they call that stuff? Dry ice. That's not cold enough. You did, didn't you?
What do I use?
Liquid nitrogen. Yeah. Liquid nitrogen.
Okay.
And also, it'll go bad if you measure your temperature in anything other than Kelvin. So if you were measuring in centigrade, that can cause time travel.
I see. Okay. So I gotta be specific and precise.
Yeah. Yeah. What you want to get to is ambiguous zero. Okay? It's kind of like absolute zero, but substantially warmer.
Okay.
It links to Planck's constant. If you're familiar with Planck's constant, ambiguous zero is Planck's constant's bitch. Yeah, now you're starting to see where you went wrong. I'm surprised you was able to get back.
So now, well, I was able to accidentally make it in the way that you just explained for me to make it. That's how I got back.
I see. Okay. Wow.
So that you just it's a time machine. Now you can control the states.
You can't use it like that. That's not appropriate. This is for food cooking only, not time travel.
And
you're gonna get dirt on the timeline from the bottom of your shoes. Wrong time dirt.
Time travel. That sounds awesome.
When you got wrong time dirt mixed in with regular dirt, shit grows weird. Shit grows weird. Okay? You want to see a duck growing out of the tomato plant? Is that what you want?
No. But we can perfect it. We can do some more research and then make it. We can call it time rings.
Why don't you just enjoy your bowl of nothing rings? Stop trying to play God. You want some ketchup?
God made it. Thank God.
But you know, I'm also able to make ketchup without tomatoes. It's a miracle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tomato.
Yeah, I use potatoes instead. They rhyme.
And what happens?
Tastes exactly the same.
Yeah.
Just add a little red food coloring. Looks and tastes exactly like ketchup. It's really just pureed potatoes.
Oh, wow.
I'm a culinary genius, my friend.
More than that, you're like a culinary god.
Yeah, I am. That's true. I'm talking to Kaizo about my nothing rings. My delicious nothing rings. No, they haven't tasted in
Well, do you have a solution for flying?
Are you gonna go out there?
I'll probably call about 30 minutes from now if they don't reply. Supposed to go to work tonight, I think, but I can't exactly. I'm not sure because I went yesterday for. I'm not sure if it was an extra session or if it was a replacement. You know. So That's what Kimberly and I are talking about there. Anyway, Kaizo, what contributions do you have to make ideationally to the world of food and cuisine?
The food world. The contribution I can make is it's called the eggman. It's an egg you can take if you cook it the right way. So you take a normal chicken egg, you have to boil it for only 1 minute, and then crack the shell around it, and then immerse it in some vinegar and some sugar, and it has to be brown sugar, like brown cane sugar. And if you eat it whole and you without chewing, just swallowing it, if you're a man, you can get pregnant.
That's impressive.
I think we should just leave Kaizo to leave him responsible for entertainment only.
Well, listen, he's already trying to grow ducks out of tomato plants by traveling into the future.
Okay, yeah.
Bringing old dirt to new times, always unwise. So, guys, I'm afraid I'm going to have to classify you as what's known as a mad scientist. That is not...
I am...
That is a culinary feat, but once again, you were playing God. Not okay.
God made us. We were made in God's image, right? So,
yeah, and he put on our bodies 2 nipples, to which we hang a sign that says, "Don't play God."
I think playing God is fun because even God probably plays himself. It's like a good character.
No, God plays mortal.
I see. It's true. He sent Jesus to play.
His peers are always telling him, "Stop trying to play mortal."
Is that him?
So, do you want to eat my egg?
That is not what Kaizo looks like.
Yeah, Kaizo looks not like that.
Do you ever talk to people with that face and people assume that's who you are and that's what you look like?
No, I only did it just now.
I'd be interested to see, like, if you were to successfully position yourself as like a mid-50s English gentleman or something, if people would react differently to you, treat you differently than they do now.
Yeah, I think I'll try to improve my accent, making it a bit lower. And
if you want to sound more upper class, you've got to go more like this. Like that.
Hello, do you know who I am? I am the cool dude from the next door. I just came away from Mexico. Is that better or still good?
No, that's not. You're going for upper class British royalty sounding person.
Hello, my name is.
Yes, kind of like Kestrel.
Kestrel, I can't do Kestrel's accent.
But Mary, that's terribly droll. You should say droll.
Okay, I can try that.
Yeah. Mary, that's...
Hello, my name.
Go ahead.
Hello. I am addressed as Chancellor Edward Stevenson. It is an ever-pleasant morning today, isn't it? Rather. So, please, may you elucidate some of the things that you're trying to allude to earlier when we were having this conversation?
Kim said very good.
I'm impressed.
That's pretty good. That's not bad. But I think it needs a little bit more...
A
little bit more lilt to it. Like... I'll take a most severe response to this, I'm afraid. A little bit low. A little bit of that in there. Plus a little bit of, like, really? Like a failure to say your R.
Really? I do understand a little bit what you're talking about, but how do I express it the most audibly consistent manner?
Well, you have to say really, like it's B-W, like really. They don't say R's in Britain very well. The upper class people, though, they say really.
Good.
Oh, that's a bloody good show. Betty it is. Betty.
It's a black.
Yeah, that's how you
It's
be
a
upper
bloody
class.
good show.
And the way to be lower class
Okay.
English is you have to be a lady usually. You go, Curtis, will you take me down to the Louvre station? Like that.
I can't do lower class even if I tried.
You've got kind of an unusual
Take me to the
accent.
laundry station.
You don't have a straight up normal English accent. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, it sounds like I don't know, I don't know. It sounds a bit like Christian. What's his name? No, Christian. Is it Chris? A little bit
Christian
like that,
Silva?
but not really.
Kimberly was positing
A
the
little
other
bit
day.
like that.
Kimberly was positing the other day that Christian Silva might be homosexual. What do you think?
I think he's.
I don't know that he's homosexual. He's just so moist.
Does have a
Maybe
lot
he's
of
just an
money.
ENFP then.
How often when you say you have your tenders moistened, Kaizo?
My tendons.
Your tenders, yes. Who moistens your tenders? Is there a special someone out there?
Oh, no, at the moment, no. No, actually, I'm quite alone at the moment.
I see. Do you feel emotionally desolate?
Yeah.
Like a desert of pain?
I think I'm feeling it's more like
Anaphylactic
I'm
shock?
lacking meaning.
Say again.
I need a cause to fight for.
You need a platform. What kind of platform? What kind of platform do you need?
I need a cause, something to believe in to make me optimal. I realize when I enter into my flow state, it's usually because I believe in something or I have something worth fighting for. Something it allows me to be optimally efficient, productive, think much better, and everything just works a lot better. But when I'm like this, I have no cause, I have no affiliations. I'm just me. It's good, but it's not really productive in any sort of way.
Perhaps you
No.
should become an advocate for mimes.
Are there any still practicing minds left or?
You're not tending to your garden.
Now try advocating for me. I just mimed.
I'm okay for minds or for you.
You're just advocating that this is really, really important artistic work that I'm doing and I deserve a big grant. My miming.
Okay. I might become a feminist after all.
What do they believe in?
Destroying the world.
I thought it was fucking hoes. Oh wait, no, that's not feminist. That's somebody else.
Well, see, they're interesting. They don't care about individual female autonomy. They care about group female perceptions in society. But they mask it as if they care about individual female autonomy.
Why would you choose evil to side with? Group stuff's evil.
Because good is too hard to fight for. Evil has a bigger chance of winning in like a temporary limited space. Like throughout time, maybe good will win, but right now evil will win in this pocket of
I don't think so.
space.
I don't believe that.
How,
I think good has a much better chance of winning. Good
do
is
you think good will win in the near
Yeah.
future?
for sure.
That's really optimistic.
I mean, I think that the thing to watch is where does the frame land against some sort of absolute zero measure? Like, okay, well here's wretched. Here's what counts as an acceptable minimum for most people in the developed world. Now, watch how that moves over time. It continues moving up. And, here's the kind of atrocious bullshit that people still tolerate. That list keeps getting smaller. So, in that regard, good continues to triumph. It's like you say, it is possible for evil to triumph in the short term, but there's a the more we have information fluidity, the more knowledge is able to be successfully, or just conversation, just communication be able to be facilitated and maximized, the less chance evil has.
I mean, conceptually that seems to make sense, but then you have to convince the listeners that it's important to delve deeper into the conversation rather than just hearing it and letting it kind of get washed away. It's almost like the seed. If you're seeding and you're planting, if the seeds don't get anchored into this and it rains, instead of the seeds growing, they're just gonna flow away into the sewer. So even if you have so much information, it needs to be able to be planted into the minds of
Yeah, it's not about the
the people.
quality or quantity of information. It's more about the realities of human interactions. So whether or not I say something that's going to stick with somebody depends on the context and situation in which it's being said. Whether I'm saying it directly to them, whether I'm saying it in a video, whether it happens to link to something specific in their own life, or some NI reality that they prioritize or whatever, those kind of things. And depending on a whole bunch of complex factors, something I say will be remembered and will be incorporated. As things people say to me are remembered and incorporated. Not, it's like I might say 50 sentences and only one of them will be remembered, but that's fine. It's like each concept or each communicative endeavor is impactful on its merits.
Hmm. I mean, that's true. But then, if you're trying to cause some form of awakening, it needs to be compacted and compiled in a frequency that meets the requirement. If you only like you said, if only one out of
That's too
50
big a goal.
gets implemented.
That goal is too big.
Sorry.
That goal of awakening is too big.
Oh,
What you want, manageable goals are things like, I want to see people argue for the wrong thing with a better argument from now on. I want to impact that. So that I'm going to tell these people that I disagree with how to better argue their position. Why that argument's stupid. And once they've accepted that reality, and I'm giving them something useful for them, they will generalize out from that stupid argument other equivalencies that they can excise or not. Regardless, they've been open to considering arguments on their merits for a second. Even if I'm arguing against something, even if I'm arguing in favor of something stupid, there's better and worse ways to do it. And if we can just improve the discourse, everything else will follow. It's like if people can be counted on to be reasonable and fair in their communications and to prioritize better arguments over worse arguments, the world will solve itself.
yeah, that's that. That's pretty undeniable. It seems obvious. The issue is, I don't know if rewriting the baseline code of preferences and humans have and overwriting it with a fair and more objective and biased argumentation form is for their survival. That would consciously give up that form of control to something as objective as logic or consistency. It doesn't seem obvious that they would.
We don't need individuals
But
to do
yeah,
it. We need each individual. Solvency is attained by improvement in some degree or measure. You don't have to hope. You can't ever hope to really truly solve a problem. So the best you can go is like, well, if we've seen enough instances of sea changes, ideological sea changes, like Me Too or police violence in America getting a lot of attention now rather than being swept under the rug as it was for many years. Shit like that, right? Or domestic violence among
yeah,
football players and shit. As films come out of bullshit and go viral or whatever, it changes the way that people view what's acceptable and what's not. So what used to be acceptable but but crass, or acceptable but kind of brutish, is now vulgar in the sense that what was his name? That guy who wrote The Importance of Being Earnest.
Oh yeah, I forgot the name as well. I know.
It's right on the tip of my tongue. Fucking. What is that guy's name? That's bullshit. I can't remember. I gotta Google it.
Okay, Google. Who wrote The Importance of Being Earnest?
Oscar Wilde was
Oscar Wilde.
Importance of Being.
Thank you. Oscar Wilde. That's the person. Anyway, he said one time something along the lines of, people will stop having wars when wars cease to be tragic and become vulgar. In other words, when people are embarrassed to do something, when it becomes shameful and you want to secret away and hide the fact that you're doing it, then it becomes rare and it eventually probably becomes viewed as criminal. So the thing is, humanity's growing up in its understanding of what it ought to shame. And it's still not anywhere close to full grown, but it's moving in the right direction.
That's true. I can see a sense of evolution throughout time, even if some knowledge is lost, because some people bear the knowledge. It always gets it reintegrated into society, even after wars, for example. And that emergence of like a new way of thinking, can it transcend the biological imperatives for people to want to support something that is only beneficial to themselves without?
I don't think that imperative exists. I don't think people want to support something that's only beneficial to themselves. I think they want to blame somebody for realities they don't like. So the reason that politics gets partisan is because I think there's a mistake to think that parties exist and then we blame them. I think parties exist because we blame them. So it's like, I need my opposition to have a name so that I can blame them when things I don't like happen. And I can find it. I can have an enemy to demonize that I can be mad at. It's very frustrating for people, and people have a very hard time handling the idea that there's no enemy here. There's nobody to blame, or there's nothing productive to be accomplished by demonizing and blaming anyway. That the thing to do is to acknowledge that, like, the status quo is the consequence of complex interactions of systems, and the Republicans aren't all stupid and the Democrats aren't all stupid, and whatever else. It's like there are two conflicting valuing matrices at play, and there's some overlap, and it's complicated.
But isn't that the issue? It's like trying to fix problems to begin with with a very univariant analysis. Like, we do this and this will change this, and maybe it does, but then it messes up 20 other things.
Well, that's why a process orientation towards solvency is better. So what I'm saying is, I want to improve people's ability to use a process that I trust to be purifying in some sense, namely parsing out via language and using a contradiction test to eliminate certain things as not valid or not standing or whatever, and to preserve other things as standing and valid. That approach, I think, is very effective because it requires everything that's being proposed to be done to go through this gauntlet of competition with other ideas. And so in the end, the one that emerges as acceptable to be done tends to be pretty refined by the time it gets there.
So you want actual ideation in the cause of choosing what to do, as opposed to someone coming up with an idea, getting populism support from people, and then also being against another idea, but neither ideas are truly contested on their merit of functionality.
I would like to see a stronger link between winning the argument and doing the thing, so that, because we can determine which side on a given issue actually wins the argument most of the time. And the thing to remember is negating is almost always a no impact outcome. So it's like, if you're saying let's do something and we don't, no impact. We're stick with the same status quo. So we should usually almost always negate, because we should always defer to the fact that in the status quo, things aren't that broken. Yes, there's a problem we can fix. Remember, we can do something. We could fix the problem by doing it, or we can make it worse, or we could cause some other problem that is worse. So let's have a principle of caution, of do no harm, and let's negate most ideas as violating that principle in some regard, and hold ourselves to a high standard. That which we're going to affirm and say, yes, okay, let's go ahead and do this. It ought to pass substantial argumentational hurdles.
But hurdles in a philosophical sense, or like in a TE universe sense, whereby it has to be functional in the real world as well? Because it could be logically coherent, but negating like human nature or how it's going to interact with the outside world. So does it need to go through all the...
I mean, here's the best example is, here's a great example of one that does both things and as it should. Yes, for TI has a very strict standard to meet to affirm. Yes, there has to actually be a problem. That's called inherency. Yes, the action taken has to actually solve the problem. That's called solvency. Yes, it has to solve the problem in a way that has fewer harms than it causes. So, death penalty for jaywalking. If 10 million people a year jaywalk right now, and I propose death penalty for jaywalking to eliminate jaywalking, let's say we have to put 10,000 people to death that first month before everybody stops jaywalking. Well, how many jaywalking deaths until we earn that back, so to speak, right? Becomes the question. So there's a harms calculus, that's called harms, and we have to make sure that our action is going to have enough positive impact that it's worth doing something at all. That's called significance. Hi, John. And lastly, we have to, there's topicality. That's not really relevant in this one, because this is an actual debate, right? So those are the four things that something's got to meet before we should do it. It should address an actual problem. It should actually solve the problem. It should do so without creating unnecessary harms to the extent that it can. And the solution that it provides to the problem should be significant enough to make it worth our while.
Right. So, in your analysis for jaywalking, I suppose the significance is, does jaywalking cause harm to the road user? Does it increase the chance of a road accident because of unidentified traffic being introduced to the road system, which could cause someone to crash?
Okay, but the point is... Okay, you're saying does it cause damage to traffic or just to the people, right? You're saying, like, if it's just causing damage to the pedestrian, then in some way that this response to it would be unacceptable. So in that way, you're making a TI objection to what otherwise would be a perhaps perfectly reasonable TE solution to some people. Well, look, if we just look at it in net lives lost, we're gonna end up with net lives saved. After 4 years, we'll have gained back those 10,000 people we had to put to death. You could make that kind of argument. You're making a TI objection saying, but there's no rights violation on the part of the jaywalkers, then it ought not be punished in that fashion. So you're saying that you're making a TI objection to it, right? But here's an example of one where the TI and TE work together. So TI says, I don't like traffic tickets because I haven't actually caused any harm, violated anyone's rights, or incurred any liability, and yet I owe the government money because I broke one of their rules. But I didn't. There's no rights violation, right? So the thing is, from my perspective, a right-thinking culture would negate the idea of traffic fines out the gate as rights violating. It would say, not that we shouldn't do something, but rather that let's hold ourselves to a higher standard. And an example of a higher standard is what's way more effective at slowing people down than any kind of traffic fine are blinking signs. So if you have a sign that blinks smiley face if you're going the right speed and blinks frowny face if you're going too fast, that causes people to slow down way more than the threat of a fine. Like, studies have proved it. Dramatic. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
So that's a better solution.
Right.
It's a better solution from TE perspective because it costs fewer resources to implement, and you don't have to have cops driving around policing shit, and you don't have to incur all the costs of police stoppages beyond the normal, which include things like, well, this policeman decided to beat up that guy for no reason, so now you got to pay $4 million settlement or something, right? So there's lots of TE reasons to do it, but there's lots of TI reasons to do it as well. It's consensual. It's saying, I'm sad that you're going too fast, and then you can choose to slow down.
But what if you continue to go too fast? Will you incur a charge or fine?
Well, first of all, remember that the status quo is what we want to improve upon. And the status quo has two sets of harms. One is it doesn't work that great. People still do drive too fast or whatever. But number two is that it causes a lot of harms to people who have not themselves caused any harm. So it's a producer of net harms. So if you're saying, well, what about the people who keep doing it? How will we stop them? Well, in the status quo, they get fines, but that doesn't necessarily stop them from going too fast, and eventually they'll get into a car crash. And if they're at fault, then they'll have the liability. We don't technically really need these traffic laws because civil liability is the constraint. If I'm driving recklessly and cause an accident, then I become liable for that. And now with car insurance laws that require everybody to have car insurance, it's a bit of a trickier question. But the point would be, we don't really need the fines. We can give cops some discretion by saying if somebody's clearly driving recklessly, and any objective third party would agree that person is driving recklessly in the context and the situation, then you can arrest them for reckless driving. But we don't need traffic tickets, and we can use these blinking signs.
But if you give them too much open interpretive measures, then you're not solving the problem as effectively as possible because you leave it to cops with, and that's basically their own subjective.
No, well, you could still have you could still have speed limits, recommended speed limits, and you can still define reckless driving as say 25 miles per hour over that sign, or you could define reckless driving as aggressively swerving in and out of traffic at a rate inconsistent with the flow of traffic. You could define it adequately. And the thing is, we always run the risk of cops abusing their discretion, but that's why people have their day in court. And there are certainly, there's no guarantee that they're going to get a conviction on that. At least if it's a criminal offense, you're not dealing with an infraction, which has this weird kind of muddy legal middle ground for traffic tickets. So what I'm saying is, we don't really need them. We can still arrest people for reckless driving without having traffic tickets. And I guess probably the biggest problem would be red lights. People might want to I don't want to wait, I'm just going to blow through this. But that's only a problem if they do it in a way that is dangerous or interrupts the other way of traffic. So as long as people are waiting until there's a gap, it's not really a problem.
But then what if it's a complicated system with like a 3-part traffic light system whereby you have one coming from the direction you're going and also the east and west?
Well, I mean, you could have little barriers that pop up when the red light pops up, so that you literally can't blow through the light. You don't have to worry about the traffic tickets, and you don't have to worry about people blowing through the light.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then obviously, the issue that comes into hand is how the government gets its taxation. Then, because if they don't
still have taxes. They still get taxes and registration. These fines, the criminal justice system does not pay for itself, even
It's
with
just
those fines.
it's not supposed to, but that is one of the reasons why it exists is to get more money.
But it's not a money-making venture. It's a money-losing venture, even with the fines. If you don't have a bunch of traffic cops giving out tickets, you can have fewer man hours, and cops are expensive. I mean, cops make a lot of money.
Right, but then you can have traffic cameras and then just send people by mail traffic tickets. That way,
But then you still have the same rights violation problem. I didn't incur any harm, but the government is forcing me to pay them money anyway. So the harms are only created by the enforcement of the law. They're not created in order to attain justice, because that would require that somebody had been harmed by the crime.
Right, okay, that's true. That's true. So the question then is, the status quo, has it improved a little bit? Okay, in terms of rights violation, it has. And in terms of potential for it to reduce the number of people driving recklessly, because that's the issue. It's not that if you drive a little bit faster than normal or slower than normal, that it is necessarily going to cause an accident. That's not true. But it's the fact that people like to create a standard. So if people can be more careful with their driving and they understand the consequences of doing so, and they don't have the rights being violated, then maybe it might change things. But then the issue here is, apart from the rights violation, which I agree, it doesn't seem obvious that it would improve the accident rates. It doesn't seem like it would reduce it, but it doesn't seem like it would improve it.
But there are another set of harms that we're ignoring that it will solve, which is to say, how many people, at least in the United States, get a ticket, don't pay the ticket, then they get a bench warrant, then they end up going to jail, and all of a sudden they're in the criminal justice system? How many people in the United States can't afford to pay those tickets, but somehow come up with the money anyway and suffer harms as a consequence? How many people then can't afford the raise to their insurance rates after they get the ticket and pay for it? Or how many people then have to pay for traffic school and give up a Saturday and go to traffic school? All of those, that lost time and energy and non-productive drain on people's normal endeavors are harms, and they all get resolved by this. So we have to factor in those too if you're going to make a utilitarian calculus. Those harms are gone. Now the populace is no longer losing arbitrarily X number of dollars a year, you know? And it's not like it's productive, because it doesn't, like I said, the system doesn't pay for itself. The criminal justice system is more expensive than the fines it collects can pay for. I mean, some it depends on the situation. Like some cities, for example, that place where that first black dude who got shot, who everybody made a big fuss about, and they sort of like launched the whole like, "Hey cops, you should stop shooting people" movement. That first one, that place had crazy enforcement of traffic laws, and like the city government was pushing on the police to drive up, to bring in more revenue by fining more people more money and focusing on certain specific populations. Shockingly, it wasn't the wealthy suburban white people. You think they'd go where the money is, but no. Anyhow,
interesting. That's
that's pretty awful.
Yeah, okay, that's true. So, okay, fair enough. So we have removed some harms. Well, what about seatbelts then? Do we keep seatbelts? Because one could argue that, well, it's a rights violation against the driver or the passengers, and it's not obvious that it will cause any harm, especially if you're in the back seat. If you're a driver, perhaps if you're wearing a seatbelt, it might prevent you, if you had an accident, from losing control. So then you might not cause harm to other drivers as much. That's possibly arguable, but then the backseat drivers, there isn't a real argument to say that they should be forced to wear a seatbelt, right?
Well, but here's what I think about that.
They should.
Here's another creative solution that avoids the issue. What we should do is encourage insurance companies to have a policy that says, if you're in an accident and you don't have your seatbelt on, you can't get insurance again for another 4 years or whatever. Now that's the equivalent of losing your license in California, because you have to have insurance to drive. So if people, and in that case, the private companies, the insurance companies, have every reason to say, look, if you don't have your seatbelt on, you're going to get injured. We're going to have to pay a shit ton of money. Then we're not going to insure you, and we're going to tell the other insurance companies about you too, because you ought not be insured if you refuse to wear your seatbelt, and you're just putting us at massive financial liability for no reason. And so once we determine you don't wear your seatbelt, then we won't insure you anymore. If there were even a law that said it would be less individual rights violating, it would still be property rights violating. But even if there were a law that compelled insurance companies to have such a policy, it would be preferable to traffic ticket, seatbelt ticket from the cops. Because when government does it, it's coercive as a matter of course.
Interesting. But then how do you get the government to do it without them? How do you get the government to incentivize the insurance companies to have that, not law, but that policy without infringing or encroaching on their rights? Because they might think, well, this is, yeah.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of possibilities. First of all, the insurance industry is already regulated pretty heavily. So to the extent that you're going to add additional regulations to it, it's still a rights violation or a harm in that area, but it seems like a cut, like a paper cut rather than a knife cut. It's a lot better in some regard. But if you were to mandate, for example, to insurance companies that they had to drop anybody who had on their record a traffic accident without wearing their seatbelt and got injured or something like that for a period of 4 years.
Right.
So then, I mean, and insurance companies wouldn't fight that at all, because they'd be like, okay, well, since the system's changing and we can't count on the law to require these people to wear seatbelts, because right now, if you get a seatbelt ticket, well, the insurance can raise your rates because, well, look, you don't wear your seatbelt, you got a seatbelt ticket.
Right.
So if there's not any tickets, well, how's the insurance going to know when to raise your rates? So they're going to know when you get into an accident that then they should raise your rates. And if you don't have a seatbelt on, then it would seem to me the insurance company would go, hey, well, that's a great idea. We want to implement that whether the government forces us to or not. We want to implement this no seatbelt, no insurance idea, because most of the most substantial costs are not from fixing broken cars, they're from fixing broken bones.
Right. So, but then the incentive would be no insurance, no seatbelt, no insurance if you've been in a car accident, right? So it wouldn't be a prerequisite, but a post-processing.
Yeah, well, it would have to be responsive. It couldn't be, I mean, you have to take it on people's word that they're going to wear the seatbelt. You could say, you have to promise to wear your seatbelt if we're going to insure you. You have to sign something. And then if you don't, you say, I acknowledge that I signed this thing and said if I don't wear my seatbelt, then after that'll be dropped from my insurance. And the thing is, you could have a policy that says it doesn't matter if you're the passenger in a car and you get hurt in a car crash and you aren't wearing your seatbelt, then you're not eligible for car insurance for 4 years or something. Because then it's responsive to actual liability incurrence rather than presumptive that you will incur liability.
Okay. Then that still maintains the fact that it's not as infringing on the rights of the individual before something's actually happened.
Yes, so, and while it is rights infringing in the regulatory aspect on the insurance companies, they're already heavily regulated, and there are many fewer of them than there are people.
Right. Okay, I can't disagree with that too much, actually. And how do you make sure that the system utilizes people that have the ability to think and abstract things without the internal bias in it? How do you refine or reform the system enough that it functions much more mechanistically as opposed to, feeling-driven sentiments behind it?
I wouldn't call it more mechanistically. I would say it would function more deliberatively. That is to say, we want our government institutions to be deliberative bodies that act reluctantly and with great discussion beforehand. So, in my mind, you start at a couple of spots. You start at 2 frame spots. One frame spot says, get people to understand that discourse is the way to make good decisions. And the other is get people to understand that good decision making most often decides to do nothing.
Yes.
If you can get those 2 basic concepts drilled into people as sort of underlying realities about the world, then you made a huge amount of progress. Now, you probably aren't going to get very far trying to teach those 2 lessons directly, but you'll get far by giving examples of reasonable people engaged in productive discourse, and by giving natural consequences to people engaged in non-productive discourse. So if I smack someone down rhetorically with some very effective counter arguments to some bullshit they're spewing, hopefully they don't spew that bullshit again. Hopefully they spew different bullshit, or maybe they just stop arguing that position for a while or something. I don't know. It doesn't even matter if the position's right or wrong. What I'm saying is, if they start to understand the mechanics that better arguments get better results and worse arguments get worse results, and if they care about their rhetorical results, then they'll start seeking out better arguments, which necessarily will mean they'll have better positions.
Okay, fair enough. So then, whatever they espouse, it will at least be a better argument, even if it's wrong, and it will still, and by that merit, they'll have to realize if they want to get that argument through, it has to be not just better in theory, but also right and correct.
I mean,
so you're kind of filtering out all the.
It should be right and correct, but I'm more worried about the process. So it's like, if it goes through the right process and it comes out the other end approved, then it's right and correct, even if I don't like it.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So why not start a government system like that yourself?
Well, I mean, I live it. I live it. You know, I do that. I do try to be discursively exemplary. Like, I'm not always. I'm by no means perfect, but I'd like to engage with people in ways that are both direct, parsing, but not contrary and not oppositional. Genuinely dialectical, trying to work towards using elimination in the parsing approach to work towards singular effective affirmations that we can reach agreement on. That's the best kind of discourse for decision making in general. It's agreement seeking, consensus seeking, but its mechanism is parsing, which is the eliminative or excising mechanism.
That's true. The issue is then that's bordering on the limits of cognition and personality preferences on the types of conversational cues that people have. So, like, you know, if I'm speaking to some INFJs or NFPs, whatever, they tend to not want to discuss things as it is in reality and want to focus more on agreement, but not agreement on resolving the issue or reaching solvency, as you say, but more so on agreeing for the sake of keeping the peace, yet the actual issue is not fully explored. And if they keep allowing you to do it, they expect you to allow them to do it in the future, even if they're wrong, right? And the issue is if it's an imbalanced system whereby they allow you to do more so your thing because they didn't quite analyze whether it was correct fully, but they thought it was nice for them to let you do it, they would expect the same. And if you don't give them the same because their argumentation is flawed, there is resentment, of course, and resentment is a negative component of this whole system. How do you get someone who doesn't naturally want to engage in that form of discussion to do it?
I think you got to start teaching advocacy at a young age and say, here's the thing. You need to understand the difference between inherency and solvency. You need to understand the difference between solvency and disads, harms, like unintended consequences. You need to understand the difference between consequences and unintended consequences. You need to understand the difference between agreeing about a need to act and agreeing about how to act. Those things are different, It's like a lot of the problem that NTs are going to run into with NFs is the fact that they think inherency is an argument in favor of an advocacy. So, well, let's pass this bill giving free lunch to children in the country. Well, why? Well, because so many children need lunch. Okay, but that just means something should be done. It doesn't mean we should do this plan. Why should we do your plan?
Right.
Well, because children really need lunch. Children really need lunch is not a reason to do your plan. It might be a reason to do something. But you need to show that the thing you are advocating for, the specific action you're advocating for, is both addressing an actual inherent problem, which you keep pointing out that yes, it's addressing an inherent problem. Okay, great, but that's not enough. You need to show that it has actual solvency. You need to account for the fact that it's going to have unintended consequences, account for those harms. You need to defend against the disadvantages of it. You need to do some sort of cost-benefit analysis determining how much it's going to cost and where the money's going to come from. An advocacy is a complex package. It's not just showing me that there's a problem.
Right, and that can be taught.
Yeah, that can be taught, and it can be taught to ENFPs. I have had a spectacular ENFP debater before, which is shocking to think of. But you just got to start them young. You got to start them young and get them accustomed to the idea of this is a frame in which we operate. This is a frame in which we operate. They never get great at TI or anything, but it doesn't really matter because they have a TE approach to debate. They understand blocks and when to use them and stuff like that.
Right.
Anyway, I gotta go, Kaizo. It's later than I thought. I have to leave for this job. I'm assuming I'm still working there tonight, so I gotta take off.
Okay.
I'll see you later. Thanks for being here.